Well, now John Deere's running all the way to Mexico, slashing more than 600 jobs in Illinois and Iowa in the process. This is just recently. The company citing rising manufacturing costs.
John Deere, the legendary American brand that fueled farms for over a century, is now on the edge of collapse. Skyrocketing costs, furious farmers, and Trump's crushing tariffs have pushed the company into a financial storm it may not survive. Once a giant in agriculture, now drowning under policies meant to protect it. Is this the final chapter for John Deere?
I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States, so that if I win, John Deere is going to be paying a 200%.
Trump has always been vocal about keeping manufacturing jobs in the U.S. He built much of his political brand on the promise of protecting American industries from outsourcing, using tariffs and trade policies as his weapons of choice. His message was clear. If a company took jobs out of the country, he would make it expensive for them to do business here. When John Deere announced its plan to shift some of its manufacturing operations to Mexico, Trump didn't hold back. He threatened to impose a 200% tariff on any John Deere equipment made outside the U.S. and then brought back into the country. That's not just a small tax, it's a financial sledgehammer. The goal? To make sure John Deere kept jobs in America and didn't chase lower labor costs elsewhere. On the surface, this might sound like a patriotic move. Protect American workers, keep jobs here, and boost the economy. But here's where things get complicated. Manufacturing isn't just about where a product is assembled. It's about where the materials come from, how efficient production is, and whether a company can stay competitive in a global market. By forcing John Deere to either manufacture everything domestically, which costs a lot more, or face sky-high tariffs, Trump's move boxed the company into a tough financial corner.
So when it comes to countries that are blocking our products coming in or they're putting tariffs on ours, I would consider doing an equal response back on those countries.
The idea behind tariffs was to make foreign-made goods more expensive, encouraging American companies to buy, sell, and manufacture domestically. But what happens when the very companies you're trying to protect rely on global supply chains? That's exactly what happened with John Deere. John Deere doesn't just build tractors in America. It sources materials, like steel and aluminum, from all over the world. So when Trump slapped tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, it raised the cost of production for John Deere almost overnight. The company had to pay more for essential materials, which meant they had to increase prices on their equipment to keep their business running. For farmers, this was bad news. Buying a new tractor or combine was already a massive investment, and now those prices were jumping even higher. Imagine being a farmer who was already dealing with unpredictable weather, fluctuating crop prices, and increasing costs of fuel. Suddenly, the equipment you depend on to keep your farm running is thousands of dollars more expensive.
Deere & Company has informed workers at John Deere Harvester Works in East Moline that about 225 workers will be placed on indefinite layoff. The layoff takes effect October 16th. John Deere Harvester Works has about 2,300 employees right now.
John Deere has always been a farmer's first company. For generations, American farmers have relied on Deere's equipment to plow fields, harvest crops, and keep their operations running smoothly. But here's the problem. Farming isn't exactly a high-profit business. Most farmers operate on razor-thin margins, meaning they don't have the luxury of making big purchases unless absolutely necessary. Trump's tariffs didn't just affect John Deere, they hit farmers directly too. One of the biggest blows came when countries like China responded with their own tariffs, particularly targeting U.S. agricultural exports like soybeans and corn. Since a huge portion of American crops are sold overseas, this sudden drop in demand lowered prices, which meant farmers were making even less money. And here's where the real issue started. Less income meant farmers couldn't afford to buy new equipment. It wasn't that they didn't want to. Many of them badly needed to replace old tractors or get better technology to improve efficiency. But when your income is shrinking and your costs are rising, buying a $200,000 plus piece of machinery just isn't an option. This hit John Deere hard. With fewer farmers buying equipment, sales plummeted. And since Deere's entire business relies on the success of American farmers, the company found itself stuck in a downward spiral. Prices had to go up because of the tariffs, which made sales drop, which then hurt John Deere's profits even more.
So a miss on earnings despite beating revenue estimates. CEO John May citing, quote, higher costs and production inefficiencies driven by the difficult supply chain situation for causing a dent in Deere's most recent quarterly results. See, John Deere, Julie.
When John Deere saw the writing on the wall, rising production costs, slowing sales, and unhappy farmers, they had to make a tough decision. In an effort to cut expenses and stay competitive, the company announced plans to shift some of its manufacturing operations to Mexico. It was a cost-saving move that made sense on paper. After all, producing equipment in Mexico meant cheaper labor and lower manufacturing costs, which could have helped offset the impact of Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum. But as soon as John Deere made the announcement, Trump fired back. He wasn't about to let an iconic American company move jobs overseas without a fight. His response was immediate and harsh: a 200% tariff on any John Deere equipment made in Mexico and then sold in the US. That meant that if John Deere followed through with its plan, it would be nearly impossible for them to sell their own products in their biggest market. This put the company in an impossible position. If they stayed in the US, production costs would keep rising, making their equipment more expensive for farmers. If they moved to Mexico, they'd get hit with massive tariffs, pricing them out of the American market. It was a lose-lose situation. If there's one thing farmers hate, it's being told they can't fix their own equipment. And that's exactly the kind of problem John Deere created with its strict repair policies. For years, John Deere has locked farmers out of repairing their own tractors, forcing them to rely on authorized dealerships and expensive repairs, instead of letting them do the work themselves. This didn't sit well with farmers, especially those who had been loyal John Deere customers for generations. Imagine spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a tractor, only to be told that when something breaks, you can't fix it yourself, even if you have the skills. Instead, you'd have to pay a dealership for repairs that could take weeks and cost a fortune. This frustration gave rise to the Right to Repair movement, a growing push to give farmers the ability to access the tools, software, and parts they need to fix their own machinery. Farmers argued that once they buy a tractor, they should have full control over it, including the right to repair it when something goes wrong. John Deere fought back, arguing that their technology is too complex and that allowing unrestricted repairs could lead to safety issues or software piracy. But that explanation didn't fly. The company faced lawsuits, protests, and growing public pressure, with some farmers even turning to other brands that were more repair-friendly. For years, John Deere was a leader in agricultural technology. They pioneered everything from self-driving tractors to precision farming tools, helping farmers boost productivity and efficiency. But with rising costs and declining sales, the company's ability to invest in new technology has been seriously threatened. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.